Imagine a place where steam rolls like fog across stone floors, where whispered secrets drift with the scent of herbs and sweat, and where nobility and commoners alike leave their titles at the threshold, trading armor, aprons, and judgment for heat, water, and maybe something a little more scandalous. Welcome to the medieval bathhouse, not just a place to scrub off the grime of a 13th century Wednesday, but a bustling world of social politics, flirtation, rumors, and occasionally, infection. So before you lean back and relax, make sure you're subscribed. Only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of deep dive storytelling. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is. Drop it in the comments and let's build a timeline of time zones. Now dim the lights, put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and let's time travel together. You've been walking since just after dawn. Your legs ache, your tunic clings to your back, and your boots, if they still qualify as such, carry the weight of 3 counties worth of road dust and horse droppings. The village ahead isn't marked on any map you've seen, but the smoke rising in lazy spirals from its stone chimneys tells you what you need to know. Civilization, food, and God's willing, hot water. As you cross the wooden bridge over a slow, murky stream, the scent hits you. Not the foul kind that cities wear like a second cloak, but something warmer, more intimate. Steam, lavender, wet linen, and a faint trace of what could either be old soap or boiled cabbage. You follow your nose through narrow, twisting alleys where shutters hang crooked and laundry waves like surrender flags. You pass a cooper hammering loudly at a barrel, a spice vendor yelling about his imported cloves, and a pair of twins hurling walnut shells at a sleeping goose. Then you see it. The bathhouse stands apart, not by size, but by shape. It's low and wide. Built from uneven stone, its roof dipped slightly in the middle like it's tired of standing. Plumes of steam drift from wooden vents, and just outside the main entrance there's a bench where 3 elderly women sit in silence, faces unreadable, hair wrapped in damp cloth. No one looks you in the eye as you approach. This is a place of transformation, not just physical but social. You leave your name at the door. What happens inside doesn't always follow you out. The door creaks on iron hinges, heavy and swollen with years of moisture. You push through and immediately you're enveloped, swallowed really, by warm, wet air that presses into your lungs like a velvet sack. The light is low and golden, coming from candles perched in recesses along the walls, flickering behind wax-streaked glass. The floor beneath your feet is not dirt but smooth stone. Wet, of course, with puddles tracing meandering paths between wooden slats and discarded slippers. You're met by a voice. Not friendly, not unkind, just direct. A woman with a shaved head and forearms that could crack walnuts gestures toward a hook on the wall. Her apron is damp, her expression dry. You strip, trying not to look too long at anyone or anything. Modesty in a bathhouse is like silence in a tavern. Technically possible, but entirely against the spirit of the place. Your belongings go into a basket. You hold onto your knife, because some habits are older than comfort. Then you're led down a hallway where the temperature rises with every step. You pass rooms lit with oil lamps and filled with people in various states of repose, argument, or flirtation. A man recites poetry to a woman who yawns audibly. 2 children are attempting to catch steam in their mouths. In one corner, a figure lies so still beneath a towel that you wonder, briefly, if they're alive or just extremely relaxed. Then, the main chamber. The ceiling rises here, vaulted and blackened by 1,000 candle-laced evenings. A central pool, round, shallow, and wide, steams like a cauldron. Around it are benches, buckets, trays of soaps and herbs, and bowls of things you don't recognize. Some people sit in the water, eyes closed, faces slack with peace. Others perch on the edge, scrubbing themselves or each other with vigorous purpose. A few converse in hushed tones, heads tilted close. It's not just a bath. It's a theater, a temple, a negotiation room. You ease into the water and it's hotter than you expected, hot enough to make your skin prickle and your bones sigh. You exhale sharply. Your neighbor, a woman with a birthmark shaped like a fishhook across her shoulder, nods without looking at you. No one asks your name, no one cares. You're here. That's enough. The sounds in the chamber settle around you. Low laughter, the splash of water, the soft slap of sponge against skin. Someone sings quietly in a language you don't know. A man discusses grain prices in a tone better suited for a love poem. There's a cough, a sniffle, a brief argument about whether nettle makes a better salve than rosemary, and then silence again. The heat works into you slowly, melting the stiffness from your shoulders and replacing it with a kind of heavy contentment. You're aware of every drop sliding down your back, every breath drawing in wet air and letting out something darker. You begin to understand why this place matters, why people trek miles barefoot with children strapped to their backs, just for an hour of steam and silence. It isn't just about being clean, it's about being seen, or unseen, whichever you prefer. You move from the central pool to a smaller one, deeper, quieter, tucked into a nook behind a curtain of dangling roots. This one smells like mint and crushed bark. You slip under, briefly, letting the water fill your ears, your nose, your mouth. For a moment, there's nothing but warmth and darkness, and then you emerge, reborn. Sort of. Nearby, an older man with a face like dry leather is scrubbing his feet with a stone. He grunts once, then gestures at a nearby jug. You pass it over without a word. He nods. Transaction complete. No names exchanged. No reason needed. Not everyone here is just soaking. Some are working. A boy of perhaps 10 years carries a stack of towels larger than himself, weaving through adults like a practiced thief. A woman with hands stained green from herbal poultices rubs a paste onto a man's shoulder while whispering something in his ear that makes him laugh nervously. Another patron, tall, thin, wrapped in cloth like a wound, sits utterly still while a younger companion plucks something from his back with tweezers and a grimace. There's a rhythm to it all. An etiquette. Unspoken rules that reveal themselves not through instruction, but immersion. You watch. You listen. You learn. And still, beneath the surface of it all, something else simmers. Rumors. Whispered deals. The kind of secrets that thrive best when your ears are open and your mouth is closed. You hear fragments of confession about a lover gone missing, a debt unpaid, a lord's daughter seen leaving at dawn. The bathhouse doesn't just cleanse the body, it loosens the tongue. And in this world, information is the only thing more valuable than salt. The heat begins to rise to your head. You lean back, letting it wash over you, letting the room blur into golden haze. For now, there is no war, no plague, no hunger, just steam and flickering shadows, and the sense that for a brief moment, you've stepped outside the wheel of time. But the night is young, and the bathhouse has more to reveal. Inside the bathhouse, the air is thick with steam and the mingling scents of herbs, sweat, and heated stone. The central chamber, a grand hall with vaulted ceilings, serves as the nucleus of activity. Here, the communal bath, a large stone basin filled with warm, murky water, invites patrons to soak away their ailments and engage in the age-old tradition of communal bathing. The water, infused with a concoction of local herbs like thyme and sage, emits a soothing aroma that permeates the room. Around the edges of the chamber, niches carved into the stone walls house smaller pools of varying temperatures. Some are scalding hot, intended to open pores and cleanse the skin. Others are cool, offering a refreshing contrast. Patrons move between these pools in a ritualistic manner, following a sequence believed to promote health and balance the body's humors. The bathhouse is a microcosm of society, where individuals from all walks of life converge. A merchant, his fingers adorned with rings, discusses trade routes with a weathered sailor whose skin bears the marks of countless voyages. Nearby, a young scribe listens intently as an elderly woman recounts tales of her youth, her voice carrying the weight of decades. The bathhouse dissolves social barriers, creating a space where stories are exchanged as freely as the water that surrounds them. In one corner, a group of musicians plays a gentle melody on lutes and flutes, their tunes weaving through the steam and adding a harmonious backdrop to the ambient chatter. The music, combined with the warmth and the rhythmic sound of water, induces a trance-like state among the bathers, blurring the lines between reality and reverie. Attendants, known as balneators, move gracefully through the space, offering services ranging from massages to the application of scented oils. Their hands, skilled and practiced, knead away the tensions of daily life, leaving patrons in a state of blissful relaxation. These attendants are often apprentices, learning the art of healing touch and the preparation of herbal remedies under the guidance of seasoned bathhouse keepers. The bathhouse also serves as an informal clinic. In a secluded alcove, a healer tends to a man with a festering wound, carefully cleaning the area with a mixture of vinegar and crushed garlic before applying a poultice of honey and herbs. Bloodletting, a common practice aimed at balancing the humors, is performed with precision, the crimson flow collected in ceramic bowls. Leeches, kept in a nearby jar, are occasionally employed to draw out what is believed to be tainted blood. Despite the communal nature of the bathhouse, moments of privacy are respected. Small curtained enclosures allow individuals to retreat for quiet contemplation or intimate conversations. Within these spaces, secrets are whispered, deals are struck, and relationships are forged or dissolved. As the day progresses, the bathhouse becomes a stage for various performances. A storyteller captivates an audience with tales of heroism and folly, his expressive gestures and modulated voice bringing characters to life. Laughter erupts as he delivers a particularly humorous anecdote, the sound echoing off the stone walls and mingling with the ever-present music. Children, under the watchful eyes of their guardians, splash in the shallower pools, their giggles adding a lightheartedness to the atmosphere. Elders, wrapped in linen towels, observe with serene smiles, perhaps reminiscing about their own youthful days. The bathhouse is not merely a place for cleansing the body, it is a sanctuary for the soul. It offers respite from the rigors of medieval life, a haven where the community gathers to share in the simple pleasures of warmth, water, and companionship. Here, amid the steam and stone, the essence of humanity is laid bare, vulnerable, connected, and ever resilient. There is a quiet rhythm beneath the visible chaos of the medieval bathhouse, a pulse that keeps everything moving, steaming, scrubbing, healing. It's not written down, it's not spoken aloud, but it is understood by everyone who steps through those soaked stone walls. And at the center of this wet universe, wielding influence with the precision of a physician and the subtlety of a politician, stands the bathhouse master, sometimes a woman, sometimes a man, sometimes both. Whoever holds this role isn't simply a caretaker of towels and buckets. They are the conductor of a human symphony, and every wrong note has consequences. Today, the bathhouse master is a woman named Isolde. She's short, broad-shouldered, and walks with the authority of someone who has thrown more than one unruly patron out by the ear. Her voice doesn't need to be raised. A single raised eyebrow from her speaks volumes. She knows every crack in the stone, every echo in the walls, and more importantly, every secret whispered between the steam clouds. Isolde remembers who bathed with whom last week, who paid late for oil service, and which traveling tradesman left behind a silver ring tucked under the edge of the North Basin. She doesn't write anything down. She doesn't need to. Her memory is both ledger and shield. Her staff, a ragtag collection of apprentices, orphans, and cousins of cousins, obey her without question. Not out of fear, but out of respect. She trained most of them from when they were small enough to hide in laundry baskets. Now, they move like pieces on a well-played board, one scrubbing a marble slab, another refilling pitchers with scalding water, a third gently waking a dozing elder before they slip too far under and become part of the bath itself. There's no shouting. Just glances, gestures, nods. It's a dance as old as the bathhouse itself. But make no mistake, the bathhouse isn't merely a place of leisure. It's also a marketplace, and not the kind with vegetables and shouting. Here, influence is the main currency, and gossip is the gold standard. Those in the water may appear relaxed, but their ears are sharp and their tongues sharper. The baths are where deals are negotiated without ink, where promises are made with nothing more than a passing touch on the wrist under the water's surface. Isolde manages all of this with the finesse of a seasoned general. She steps between disputes with perfect timing. A murmur rises between two men, one a weaver, the other a city official, about grain shipments and owed favors. She's there before voices rise. With a soft word and a pitcher of scented water poured at precisely the right moment, the tension dissolves. No need for violence. Not here. The water handles most things. In the upper floor, accessible only by a narrow spiraling stairway, worn smooth by centuries of damp feet, is the quiet chamber. It's dimmer, drier, reserved for the wealthiest, the oldest, the most particular. Here, patrons recline on padded benches, receive massages with imported oils, or sip warmed drinks served in thin ceramic cups. The curtains between seats are heavy, woven with dark blues and reds, creating semi-private cocoons of whispered conversation. If the lower level is the heart of the bathhouse, this chamber is its mind, where quiet schemes unfold, where informants meet with veiled nobility, where letters are read and burned, and where even Isolde treads lightly. No servant speaks up here unless spoken to. No apprentice lingers unless summoned. And yet, despite the silence, information flows more freely here than anywhere else. In the quiet chamber, truths slip loose, not with volume, but with vulnerability. It is far easier to confess sins when wrapped in warmth and anonymity. Meanwhile, back on the ground floor, the world continues in glorious rhythmic mess. A group of women in colorful wraps recently arrived from a neighboring town, gossip animatedly in a dialect laced with musical lilt. Their laughter rings out, drawing looks of curiosity, some of interest, some of judgment. They ignore it all, pouring scented oil into each other's hands, exchanging news from their town like merchants dealing in silks. At a wooden table near the entrance, a game is underway. Tiles clack against the surface, marked with symbols from an older tongue. An elderly man with a long nose and longer beard slaps down a piece, grins, and mutters something about luck being a cruel mistress. His opponent, a baker with flour still under his fingernails, narrows his eyes and counters. A small audience has gathered, watching, betting quietly, not with coin but with promises, with favors, with whispered suggestions of future collaboration. Isolde passes through, unnoticed except for the moment the tile game falls silent as she walks by. It resumes only when her footsteps fade into the steam. Her authority isn't just respected, it's woven into the fabric of the place. The bathhouse functions because of her, and because everyone knows what happens if it doesn't. In a chamber tucked behind the main pool, half shielded by hanging moss and a carved wooden screen, a woman kneels with a tray of clay bowls. She's the herbalist. Not officially. No one calls her that. But if your joints ache or your sleep escapes you, or if something itches in a place you'd rather not talk about, you come to her. Her bowls are filled with salves, pastes, crushed leaves soaked in oil or wine. She doesn't smile. She doesn't speak unless you ask. But her treatments work. Sometimes that's all you need. The line between healer and poisoner is thin in places like this. Trust is earned over time, through whispered recommendations, and through the visible healing of wounds. The herbalist's presence is tolerated, even protected, because even the bathhouse master knows that sometimes the physicians are too far, too proud, or too expensive. There is one rule that everyone knows, written in no ink and spoken in no official tone. You do not bring violence into the water. Arguments, yes. Accusations, absolutely. But if a fist is raised, if a knife flashes, those involved vanish. Isolde sees to it personally. Sometimes they return with bruises. Sometimes they return with apologies. And sometimes they do not return at all. No one asks. No one dares. Because beneath the surface of warmth and camaraderie, the bathhouse runs on balance. Too much heat and tempers boil. Too much cold and the spirit falters. Isolde maintains that balance, and everyone plays their part. From the children who carry towels to the musicians who soothe tempers with melody, every soul within the walls contributes to the fragile harmony. By dusk, the light filtering through the high vents turns amber. Shadows stretch, the music softens, and the energy of the bathhouse shifts again, The day bathers depart, leaving behind a calm that rolls in like tide. The water is skimmed, herbs refreshed, benches wiped. Candles are relit, their wax puddling over old drips. The evening patrons begin to arrive, different faces, different purposes. Some are tired laborers seeking rest. Others are lovers seeking privacy. A few are watchers, here for nothing more than the hum of human presence. And Isolde remains, at the center, always watching, always knowing. The steam wraps around her like armor, and as the last light slips behind the stone walls, she smiles, just slightly. The night has just begun, and with it comes a new symphony to conduct. Night in the medieval bathhouse does not descend. It emerges, slowly, like a memory or a confession. It leaks in through cracks in the walls, glides along the surfaces of cooling stones, and replaces the vitality of day with something quieter, deeper, and far more intoxicating. What was, during the day, a hub of healing and social exchange now transforms into something altogether more enigmatic. The heat remains, as does the steam, but the mood shifts entirely. Candlelight becomes the only source of illumination, flickering against damp walls in erratic rhythms. Shadows dance like silent actors upon the mist, and everything begins to whisper, even the water. In this liminal time, patrons move more slowly. There is no rush now, no urgency to rinse or gossip or jostle for a preferred bench. The air is still thick, but gentler, calmer. Words spoken here feel heavier, as though dipped in oil and set gently aflame. People arrive in pairs or alone, cloaked in thicker fabrics, faces obscured by the damp hoods of travel-worn garments. The soundscape changes as well. The slap of water against stone softens, replaced by the delicate creak of wood and the occasional sigh of pleasure or exhaustion. Even the musicians, those tireless keepers of rhythm, shift their melodies from brisk jigs and communal tunes to slow, haunting strains that echo like distant thunder in a forest of dreams. This is when the secrets come. In the northeast alcove, partially hidden by an arch woven with ivy and spider silk, a game is underway, not of dice or tiles, but of information. A land surveyor from the northern marshes leans close to a foreign woman in travel-stained robes. Their conversation is low, full of half-spoken truths and almost forgotten names. Between them, a single candle burns in a bronze cup, flickering each time one of them exhales. What's at stake in their game isn't coin, but territory, lines on maps, access to rivers, the future of fields not yet tilled. And here, in this echoing chamber of steam and stone, their voices carry more weight than the proclamations of any town crier. Elsewhere, by the medium pool near the bathhouse's oldest wall, where the stones are darkened not just by water but by time, a soft argument rises between two cloaked figures. One bears the sigil of a distant abbey stitched into the hem of their garment. The other carries nothing but a walking stick made from carved driftwood. Their words rise in tone and intensity, though never above a whisper. They speak of a missing artifact, of ancient debts, of betrayal buried beneath years of polite silence. No one intervenes. Arguments, after all, are part of the bathhouse's ecosystem. Only violence is forbidden. Words, those can be sharp as razors, but they are allowed to bleed freely. In the back, where the air is hottest and the pools are smallest, a ritual is taking place. Not religious, at least not in the sanctioned sense. 3 figures stand waist-deep in water thick with rose petals and crushed sage. They hum in low, vibrating tones that seem to thrum through the very stones beneath your feet. A fourth, a child perhaps 12 or 13, kneels on the edge, eyes closed, hands clasped tightly around a string of beads carved from black stone. The air around them is heavier somehow, charged, sacred, the sort of moment you witness in silence and dare not speak of after. Even Isolde does not pass this way. She simply casts one glance down the corridor, then turns, letting that pocket of mystery exist untouched. The bathhouse is not governed by superstition, but it is shaped by it. The stones are old. The water comes from deep underground. No one truly knows how the pools stay warm, even on the coldest winter nights. Some say the bathhouse was built atop ancient springs blessed by forgotten gods. Others whisper that the heat comes from something buried far below, something that stirs only when the chanting begins. Either way, no one questions the warmth. They simply enjoy it. But they do not mock the rituals, no matter how strange. In the bathhouse, belief is allowed to bloom wild and untrimmed. Among the regulars of the night are those who never visit during the day. The brooding types, the thinkers, the watchers. A woman in her 40s, face marked by faint scars and her eyes alert like a hawk, always sits near the west pillar. She never speaks unless spoken to, but she sees everything. Some say she was once a mapmaker who lost her title when she charted something she shouldn't have seen. Others claim she used to be part of a royal household, but vanished after an accusation too dangerous to repeat aloud. Whatever her story, she is a fixture now. The bathhouse has absorbed her like steam into linen. She is neither staff nor guest, just part of the walls now. There's also the man known only as the listener. Bald, pale, with an expression so neutral, it's unsettling. He never bathes, just sits. Always in the same corner, always facing the room, eyes half closed as though dozing. But his ears twitch at every conversation. His presence is tolerated because he never causes trouble, never interrupts, never moves. But many wonder what he does with what he hears. Some believe he's a collector of stories. Others think he sells secrets to merchants and nobles. A few even believe he's deaf and the whole persona is a bluff. But no one tests him. No one dares. As the hours stretch and the candles begin to burn low, the mood becomes dreamlike. Conversations slow. Movements become languid. The steam thickens, draping the bathhouse in a fog that blurs outlines and intentions. Here, in the final hours before dawn, is when the most fragile things are spoken. The confessions whispered not out of necessity, but release. A soldier admits he no longer dreams when he sleeps. A baker, face flushed with drink and warmth, admits to lying about the recipe that made her famous. A midwife whispers a name she's kept secret for 12 years. The bathhouse, now more spirit than structure, accepts it all. It absorbs, records, forgets, forgives. No one leaves the same as they entered. That's not the magic of soap and steam. That's the magic of vulnerability, of shared space, of understanding without the need for questions. You could walk into the bathhouse a stranger and leave it having touched a dozen souls, none of whom you could name, all of whom you'll remember. And outside, in the street beyond, the night waits. The rest of the world, its cold, its judgment, its sharp edges, feels impossibly distant from within the bathhouse walls. But eventually, every patron must rise. Towels wrap around shoulders. Coins are discreetly placed into ceramic bowls. Words of parting are murmured, often in tones too soft to decipher. Isolde, standing at the entrance with a candle in one hand and a ledger in her mind, nods to each guest. She says nothing. She never does. Her approval, like her authority, is silent but complete. As the final figures vanish into the dark streets of the sleeping town, the bathhouse closes its eyes. The last flames are extinguished. The basins are drained, scrubbed by quiet hands in the pre-dawn hush. The herbal bowls are cleaned and dried. The linen is folded, and slowly the heartbeat of the building slows to a rest. Tomorrow it will all begin again. New bodies, new stories, new whispers. But tonight, the bathhouse has done its work. It has cleansed, it has connected, it has held. Every stone in the bathhouse tells a story. Some carved, some whispered, some soaked into the very grain of the ancient beams that support its heavy, steam-softened roof. Long before the town built up around it, before the cobbled roads or market stalls, the place where the bathhouse now stands was already known for its water. They say it was first discovered by travelers, merchants dragging wagons across unfamiliar terrain who paused to camp by a curious bubbling spring, only to find the water warm even in winter and strangely fragrant, as if herbs grew in its depths. No fire was needed to heat it. No hand stirred the earth. The warmth simply was, rising from the soil like breath from the lungs of the world itself. Over time, those same merchants began to return, speaking in hushed voices of how the water not only soothed aching muscles, but seemed to quiet the mind. Wounds healed faster, sleep came easier, nightmares grew fainter, word spread, and where word travels, people follow. What began as a simple stone circle around a pool soon grew into a structure, rough at first, then refined by generations who found in this place something they could not name but deeply needed. The bathhouse, like the town, built itself over time from the need to gather, to rest, to forget. But not everyone agrees on its origins. A tale often passed between apprentices scrubbing floors at twilight speaks of a hermit, a healer who lived alone among the wild herbs and boiling streams. She, the story goes, was the one who coaxed the first stone into place, who taught others which leaves could draw poison from a wound, and which roots would lull a baby to sleep. Some say she was a midwife, others a witch. Some say she never existed at all. But in a locked drawer behind the master's chamber, there is said to be an iron key attached to a bone-carved amulet in the shape of a woman kneeling, hands outstretched. The key fits no known door, and still it is kept. Other stories linger too, old ones, darker ones. On the coldest nights, when the wind howls and the bathhouse is shuttered tight against the frost, a different version of its history is shared. This version claims that the water flows from beneath an ancient burial site, from crypts carved into the roots of the hills themselves, where bodies were laid not in death, but in slumber. The warmth, they say, is not from the earth, but from something sealed below, something dreaming still, waiting. The symbols carved into the original foundation stones, now worn smooth by centuries of feet and water, once held meaning, warnings perhaps, or invocations. Few remember their language now. Fewer dare to research it. But sometimes when the steam rises just so and the night is especially quiet, the symbols seem to pulse faintly, as though breathing. Still, belief is a strange and flexible thing. For every tale of hidden forces and forgotten rituals, there is a practical explanation offered by the town's more scholarly residents. The bathhouse's springs, they argue, are simply geothermal vents, heated by the shifting crust beneath the region. The herbs grow well because of the warmth, and the mineral content of the water explains its soothing properties. It's science, they say, nothing more. But these are the same scholars who refuse to bathe after sundown, and who cross themselves before passing the northern wall, where ivy always grows regardless of season and no candle flame stays lit for long. Regardless of origin, what's undeniable is the place's influence. Generations have passed through its doors. Entire family lines have been scrubbed clean here, born here, healed here. Babies have taken their first wailing breath in the shallow birth pool, while elders have slipped quietly from life in the steam-slicked shadows of the upper chamber. Wars have been discussed here, marriages proposed, betrayals whispered. Even the town's judges, men and women dressed in silks and armed with scrolls, sometimes seek counsel not in the courthouse, but with bare skin and closed eyes among the bathhouse benches. The bathhouse has seen floods and fires, plague and famine. It has been closed only twice in living memory. Once during the black winter when the river iced over and the town's wells cracked from the cold. The other during the year of ash, when the distant mountains spat fire into the sky and turned day to dusk for 7 weeks. Both times, the bathhouse reopened unchanged, as though no disaster could quite reach it. Some say it's protected, some say it protects others. Whichever it is, the result is the same. It endures. There's a corner of the building seldom used, known as the listener's alcove. It's not named for the quiet man who sits near the pool, though many assume so. No, this space earned its title centuries ago, back when the walls were still damp with new mortar. A mason working late at night claimed to hear voices, not echoes, but conversations, clear as day, from people no longer present. Whispers from the stones themselves. He left town the next morning and was never seen again. Today, the alcove is used only by the boldest, or the most desperate. They say if you sit long enough, you might hear your own voice. Not as you are, but as you were, or as you could be. Some return shaken, others return serene. A few never return at all. Even the architecture of the bathhouse hints at mysteries. The central dome, which no architect can fully explain given the materials available at the time, features a mosaic barely visible through centuries of steam damage. It depicts a circle of figures, some human, some less so, surrounding a fire that seems to burn both above and below them. Their faces are indistinct, their hands all reaching outward. Whether in welcome or warning is anyone's guess. When the light catches the tiles just right, the image appears to move, a trick of heat and shadow that many find deeply unsettling. Still, the bathhouse isn't feared. Revered, perhaps. Respected. But not feared. It is, above all, a place of comfort. And that comfort is not just physical. It's generational. Grandmothers bathe in the same basin where they once soothed their own mothers. Children learn to swim here, to trust water, to sit still and listen to the stories the elders tell with voices as wrinkled as their fingers. The bathhouse teaches without speaking. It's a place of inheritance, not of gold or land, but of memory. And with memory comes tradition. Every year, on the first new moon of spring, a quiet ceremony takes place. No flyers are posted, no bell is rung. But as the sky darkens and the first frogs begin their song, townsfolk gather at the bathhouse steps, each bearing a single candle. One by one, they light them from the master's torch and walk silently through the chambers, leaving no words, only light. By the end, the bathhouse glows not from flame, but from presence. It's a ritual not of mourning or worship, but of gratitude for the warmth, for the healing, for the unspoken agreement that this place, above all others, will always be here. Watching, listening, holding. And still, in the quietest hour, when even the coals have turned to embers and the last footsteps have faded, the bathhouse speaks in its own way. The drip of water, the creak of ancient timber, the faint rhythmic sound of wind through the vents. A heartbeat, not a human one, but one all the same. A reminder that some structures once built never truly sleep. A bathhouse is not a building made of stone and timber. Not really. It is built, in truth, of people, of voices echoing in warm air, of footsteps on wet stone, of laughter and sighs and the occasional splash that marks a moment someone will remember long after the heat fades from their skin. Walk through its steam-filled corridors long enough, and you'll come to recognize the patterns, the predictable currents of those who arrive with routine, ritual, and reasons both obvious and hidden. It is in these individuals that the soul of the bathhouse lives, and in their presence, a new story begins with every sunrise. There is the fisherman, Tolan, who arrives every fifth day like clockwork, seaweed still tangled in his beard, hands as rough as oars, skin like salted leather. He speaks to no one unless he's spoken to, yet nods at every face he recognizes, a small gesture that has come to feel almost sacred. Tolan always sits at the far end of the hot pool, closes his eyes, and hums a tune only he knows, low, wordless, resonant. No one knows what he's singing. Some say it's for the wife he lost to the waves. Others believe he hums to keep himself tethered to the land. Either way, no one interrupts him. The bathhouse holds space for mourning as easily as it does for joy. On the opposite side of the social tide is Kyra, a flax merchant with too many opinions and not enough volume control. Her presence arrives before she does, echoing through the corridor as she recounts the latest scandal, the cost of imported linen, or the ineptitude of her fourth husband. She scrubs her elbows with such intensity, it's as if she's trying to erase them, and punctuates every laugh with a splash. But beneath the bravado is a sharp eye. She notices who enters, who avoids whom, who exits too quickly. She has a memory like Isolde's, and an instinct for truth that borders on unnerving. Yet people flock to her. Perhaps it's the warmth in her teasing, or the way she always shares her soap. Then there's the one they call the reader. He's rarely seen without a scroll, sometimes tucked into a waterproof pouch around his neck. He reads aloud to himself, quietly, carefully, tracing each word with a finger as if tasting it. No one knows where he's from. His accent is soft and not quite familiar, his manner too careful, too gentle for someone who's supposedly passing through. Some suspect he was once a scholar turned vagabond, exiled perhaps, or disgraced. Others think he's simply searching for something in the text that he can't quite name. When approached, he offers a nod but little else, and returns to his reading. Yet when he's gone, people discuss the passages he murmured as if the words clung to the steam and made a nest there. Of course, not everyone in the bathhouse is so openly peculiar. Some are invisible by design, domestics and cooks who use the quiet of the early morning to ease their joints, to soak away the demands of kitchens and cellars. There are apprentices with ink-stained fingers, merchants between routes, traveling performers who leave behind trails of glitter and the faintest scent of lavender oil. There are the quiet couples who pretend not to be watching others, and the loners who are watched more than they realize. All types move through the same water, breathing the same heat, and leaving parts of themselves behind in subtle, quiet ways. And then there's the youth, the bold, the reckless, the curious. Teenagers who sneak in with smirks and try to behave like adults. Some succeed. Others cannonball into the cold pool and are immediately scolded by elders who were doing the same thing 30 years earlier. The bathhouse tolerates them with a kind of amused patience. Even Isolde, stern and unreadable, has been known to let a few rule breakers slide, so long as they don't endanger anyone else. Because beneath her iron posture, she too remembers what it means to enter this space young and wide-eyed. The most fascinating among the regulars, however, are not the loud or the eccentric, but the ones whose stories emerge slowly, like a bruise blooming beneath the skin. Take, for instance, the woman called Morel. She arrived one autumn evening wrapped in furs far too fine for this town, wearing rings that didn't match and boots that had seen neither dirt nor snow. She spoke in clipped tones and carried herself like someone used to being served. No one asked why she came. They never do. But over the weeks that followed, she returned again and again. At first she stayed only minutes, barely touching the water. Then longer. Then long enough to speak, softly, carefully, with a weaver who had lost her child to fever the winter before. Soon they sat together, every visit, rarely talking, but always side by side. The rings disappeared, the boots wore down, and one day Morel brought bread, hard, dense, clearly homemade, and handed it to the weaver without a word. Nothing more needed to be said. These unspoken bonds are everywhere, a nod between two aging men who never bathe at the same time, but always arrive to exchange greetings. A coin slipped silently into the bowl of the old man who sings forgotten lullabies in the outer chamber. A towel folded and placed in the same spot every week, by someone who remembers which guest favors that particular seat. These are the small kindnesses, the invisible rituals, that bind the bathhouse community together more tightly than walls ever could. It's important to understand that this space does not transform people, it reveals them. Stripped of armor, of fashion, of titles and roles, they are left with nothing but their words and their choices, and in this vulnerability, truth often leaks out. A noble who brags of conquest will falter in the cold pool. A servant with calloused hands will be treated as equal to the mayor, who once passed them on the street without a glance. The bathhouse knows no hierarchy, only heat, only presence. And in this democracy of steam, unexpected alliances form. A reclusive map copier and a traveling brewer bond over their shared dislike of cold water. A midwife and a blacksmith begin exchanging foot rubs in quiet gratitude. Even rivals find common ground, because no argument can last long when both parties are sweating in the same shallow pool, feet touching, trying not to slip. And yet, for all this unity, the bathhouse is not without tension. Old wounds flare when certain faces appear. Some patrons change their routine to avoid others. A man might stand and leave the moment a particular woman enters, and no explanation will be given. Those who know the backstory remain silent, and those who don't learn to accept that not all questions have answers. But even these moments are part of the tapestry. Friction, too, is human, and the bathhouse does not promise perfection, only space. The most remarkable thing about these people is not their drama or their beauty or their peculiarities. It's their ordinariness, their willingness to share air, to share space, to be part of something quietly communal. They do not arrive seeking spectacle. They arrive seeking simplicity, warmth, relief, maybe healing, maybe just a pause. And in doing so, they become part of something far larger than themselves, a shared rhythm, a murmuring body of humanity that flows in and out with the rising steam. So when you think of a medieval bathhouse, don't imagine only the stone and the heat. Imagine these people. Imagine their stories lingering in the mist. Imagine the laughter and the silence and the unspoken moments where understanding passes between strangers without a single word. This is what truly fills the baths. This is what keeps them sacred. The rhythm of the bathhouse begins long before the sun lifts her head above the hills, before the cock crows, before the chimney smoke curls into the waking air. While the rest of the town lies curled in quilts and snoring against the frost, the bathhouse breathes quietly in the dark, like a creature waking slowly from hibernation. It starts with the keeper, Isolde, or someone in her stead, entering through the side door with keys clinking like a small bell in her apron. Her lantern cuts a warm, soft line through the shadows. Her breath clouds around her face in the chilly pre-dawn air. No one else walks the corridors at this hour, save for ghosts and memories, and both leave her respectfully alone. The first task is always the fires. Coal and wood, fed into stone furnaces beneath the tiled floor, ancient and soot-blackened, coaxed back to life with practiced patience. The hearth groans, the pipes rattle like bones stretching after too long still. Soon, the gurgle of water begins to rise, pushing heat into every corner of the building. Steam creeps up the walls past the beams and hanging herbs, wrapping itself around every surface like a shawl. Windows fog, mirrors cloud, and with it, the first breath of the bathhouse's soul returns. Before the town stirs, apprentices begin their rounds. The youngest ones clean, scrubbing the benches, wiping the clay tiles where yesterday's footsteps dried into dust. They mop the stray water puddles and sweep out the leaves brought in by wind and careless boots. Older hands prepare the herbs, bundles of mint, rosemary, yarrow, and thyme tied with string and set into warming bowls. Oil is decanted from clay jugs into shallow saucers, some scented, some plain. Towels, folded by hand, are stacked in precise pyramid-like formations along the walls. The first guest always arrives before the church bell rings. Always the same one. An old woman with eyes like river glass and a walking stick carved with the faces of wolves. No one knows her name. She simply appears, gliding through the doorway like mist itself. She nods at whoever is present, places one coin in the stone bowl at the entrance, and disappears into the warmest pool. She never speaks, never needs to. Her presence announces that the day has begun. As the sun breaks over the tiled roofs of the village, the bathhouse comes to life. Bakers arrive with flour still on their sleeves, shepherds with hay in their boots, fishmongers with tired eyes and creaky joints. These are the early bathers, the ones who need a moment of peace before facing the market stalls and long hours. Their conversations are few, quiet, respectful. No one speaks above a murmur in the first hour. It is a sacred time, not by religion, but by tradition. These people understand that the morning bath is a kind of prayer, a warm confession of survival. Mid-morning brings the workers, stonecutters, weavers, mill hands, some alone, some in small clusters, all stiff from effort, stained by their trade, eyes alert. The atmosphere shifts here, louder, more practical. Conversations grow bolder, people stretch, laugh, groan. Injuries are compared, blisters examined, advice traded like coin, how to ease a shoulder strain, how to soothe cracked palms. These are not idle bathers. They are menders, healing their bodies just enough to continue breaking them. The steam rises thicker, richer with their presence, charged with the scent of work and resilience. By noon, the bathhouse is at its most crowded. The central pool brims with bodies, shoulder to shoulder, sweat to sweat, like soup thick with too many ingredients. At the long benches in the dry chamber, people eat bread with thick slices of cheese, dripping honey into tea, trading bites of salted fish. It is not unusual to see a noble's son seated beside a miller's wife, both laughing at the same joke, both red-faced from the heat. This is the bathhouse's magic. It does not erase difference, but it flattens its hierarchy. The water does not care who you are, only how long you stay in. Afternoons settle slower. This is the time for the wanderers. Travelers, pilgrims, foreign merchants with sand in their boots and spices on their breath. Some come alone, others guided by locals who've insisted they cannot leave town without experiencing the bath. It becomes a place of translation. Languages blend, stories weave together. A trader from the north tells of snow leopards prowling the peaks. A woman from across the sea shares tales of hot springs that hiss from volcanic ground. People listen, enraptured, forgetting for a moment the limits of their world. The bathhouse staff watches all of this with calm attention. Every visitor is a variable. Every moment can shift the balance. A stranger too loud, a noble too proud, a merchant too familiar with someone else's spouse. Yet somehow, the staff adjusts. They guide traffic like wind through trees. They notice what needs smoothing long before tension crests. A pitcher of cold water here, a soft word there, a gentle reminder to sit, not stand, in the upper chamber. They keep the harmony intact without ever showing the strain it takes to do so. Evening brings the families, parents with children in tow, grandparents carrying babies wrapped in clean cloth. The bathhouse echoes with laughter now, light, uncontrolled, innocent. Little ones splash in shallow pools under watchful eyes. Older children chase each other along the outer hallways, feet slapping against wet stone, leaving footprints that disappear within minutes. For many of these children, this is their first memory of water not carried in buckets or poured in cold tubs. They learn warmth here. They learn stillness. They learn respect, not because it is enforced, but because it is felt. As twilight approaches, everything begins to soften again. The light shifts to gold, then amber, then deep orange as candles replace sunlight. Music returns, this time softer, older, played on flutes and bowed lyres. Elders begin to arrive, wrapped in cloaks, their movements deliberate, slow, ritualistic. They take their usual seats, greet familiar faces, and settle into a silence that does not need filling. They've heard all the stories. Now they are content to sit and remember. This is also when the bathhouse becomes romantic, not in a theatrical sense, but quietly, tenderly. Lovers find corners. Fingers touch underwater. A poem is whispered into a damp shoulder. There are smiles exchanged across pools, glances that linger just long enough to suggest something more. Yet there is no lewdness, no crudeness, only softness, the kind that heat brings, the kind that makes even strangers want to be kinder to each other, even if only for the hour they share this sacred warmth. Night descends in full, and the pace slows further still. Late-night guests are different. These are the thinkers, the lonely, the sleepless. They arrive with minds heavy, spirits dimmed. They soak quietly, asking nothing but space and silence. Some cry, not loudly. Just tears sliding silently from closed eyes. The bathhouse allows it, offers no judgment. Others talk to no one for hours, then suddenly open up to a stranger beside them, pouring out their hearts in the dark, their voice no more than breath made visible. These moments are raw, real, and fleeting. The next day they may not even nod to each other. But tonight, in the warmth, they were known. As midnight nears, the bathhouse begins to close. The pools are drained slowly, one by one, until only the central bath remains. Staff move quietly, lighting fewer candles, collecting forgotten cups and towels. The last guests linger, unwilling to part with the comfort they've wrapped around themselves like linen. But eventually even they must rise, step into slippers, wrap themselves in cloaks, walk back into the cool night, carrying the heat with them just a little longer. Isolde closes the doors, locks the gate, douses the final lantern. The bathhouse sleeps once more, but inside the walls still hum with the day's residue. The laughter, the arguments, the healing, the tenderness, every moment soaked into stone, held until the sun returns again. For all its warmth, all its hospitality, the medieval bathhouse is not merely a place of rest. Like any living institution that gathers people under one roof for longer than a moment, it becomes something else entirely over time, something more intricate, more layered, more political. It is not governed by coin alone, though coin plays its part. It is not ruled by rank, though status is never far behind. What truly defines the undercurrent of this world is exchange. 1,000 small deals, favors, silences, and recognitions that shift constantly, invisible to the untrained eye but as real and consequential as any crown or charter. The bathhouse has its own economy, and it is both older and more agile than anything found in the market square. Begin with the obvious. Money. There is a small worn bowl by the entrance placed beneath a carved sign that simply reads, "Give if you can, take if you must." It is never empty, though no one ever sees who puts coin into it. Patrons from all walks contribute, some generously, others with a single copper clink. Those in need know to look here first, and no questions are asked if a few coins disappear. No pride is lost in this space. The bathhouse does not permit hunger or shame to thrive. It is not charity, not really. It is balance. But true transactions rarely happen so plainly. The bathhouse runs on knowledge: who owes whom, who needs what, who is in favor, and who is barely holding on. The keeper, Isolde, keeps no ledgers, but her mind is a matrix of obligations and unspoken deals. She knows which herbalist will trade a poultice for 3 candles, which musician expects bread in exchange for songs, which young couples sneak in late and quietly leave firewood behind in gratitude. Nothing is formal. Nothing is owed. But everything is remembered. Some exchanges are whispered in steam-soaked corners, between those who know how to keep their voices low and their expressions blank. A potter, desperate for better clay, leans close to a mason with ties to a distant quarry. In return, a vase is promised, not now, but before the spring festival, shaped in the likeness of the mason's late wife. A merchant slips a scrap of paper into the hand of a traveler whose boots are too fine for his story. The merchant receives later that night a name, and with it a debt repaid from 10 winters past. A debt that had frozen, like water in stone, waiting for this exact hour to thaw. The bathhouse is also a courier of messages, notes passed hand to hand, stitched into hems, rolled inside hollowed reeds. Not all of them are secret. Some are love letters, the ink smudged by sweat and sincerity. Others are warnings, delivered to the right ear at the right time to prevent scandal, arrest, or something worse. Those who work in the bathhouse, the apprentices, the floor scrubbers, the children who carry towels and oil jugs, see more than they speak of. They are part of the system, not just employees but witnesses, trusted not because of age or station, but because they have learned the value of stillness and silence. There's a girl, maybe 10 or 11, who wears bells on her ankles, not for decoration, but because it keeps people from being startled when she appears at their side with water or towels. Her name is Linnet, and she speaks only when necessary. But every secret that has ever passed through the lower pools has brushed past her ears, and if you were to follow her home, you'd find a diary under her mattress with symbols no one else can read. She isn't spying. She's recording, archiving a world that trusts her enough not to notice. Even trade goods pass through the bathhouse, albeit in less visible ways. A bowl of imported olives left beside the hot pool with no note, claimed hours later by a passing noblewoman who pays the favor back a week later with a small pouch of saffron. A bolt of cloth folded and hidden in a storage niche, meant for a seamstress whose cousin arrived home injured and in need of work. The bathhouse never asks for payment in return. But its patrons know that generosity flows in circles, and what you give may return to you in the most unexpected shape. And then there are the services. Physical, yes, but not what many might first assume. While some bathhouses in other regions are known for less discreet offerings, here the intimacy remains largely emotional, domestic, safe. Still, there is commerce even in comfort. A lonely farmer pays not with coin, but with a song taught to him by his mother. A widower trades a basket of apples for a foot rub and a shared silence. Touch is valued, not always sold, but exchanged, for stories, for food, for honesty. Not every ache is of the body. Some are in the spirit, and the bathhouse knows how to tend both. There is, of course, darker trade. No place of gathering is ever fully innocent. Occasionally, a figure will arrive under cover of night and leave before sunrise. Their face half hidden, their movements calculated. They leave nothing behind but a message or a request or a pouch too heavy to be harmless. The staff does not interfere unless safety is threatened. The bathhouse is neutral ground, and those who violate its peace do not return twice. Still, such visitors are rare and their business brief. The true power here is not in crime or coin. It's in community, in knowing that when the snow falls hardest, someone will bring kindling, that when a child cries in pain, a stranger will offer a poultice, that when grief is too much, there will always be one hot pool, one quiet seat, one hand to hold. And sometimes the economy of the bathhouse operates entirely on memory. A man once gave a winter cloak to a shivering apprentice and asked for nothing in return. Years later, that apprentice, now older, stronger, respected, saw the same man return, now hunched and coughing. He never recognized the face, but the cloak, the way it had been folded, the shape of its stitching, he remembered. That night, the older man slept in the warmest chamber, fed soup made from 3 kitchens, and left with a pouch heavier than he arrived. No explanation was needed, no story shared, just balance. In this way, the bathhouse becomes not just a shelter, but a shared agreement, fluid, flexible, deeply human. Its wealth is not stored in chests or walls. It exists in trust, in the quiet knowledge that you are not alone, that what you give, you may someday receive. That in a world so often governed by cruelty and scarcity, here is a place where your name, your coin, your history matters less than your kindness. So when the lanterns flicker low and the last trades of the day are made, not with coin, but with gestures and looks and held silences, the bathhouse does not rest poorer or richer. It simply resets. The debts paid, the favors filed, the current of silent commerce continuing beneath the warm water and polished stone. Because here value isn't what you bring, it's how you leave others when you go. Not all stories in the bathhouse are told aloud. In fact, most of them never pass through the lips of those who live them. They are stories written in glances across the water, in the stiffness of a posture, in the way 2 people never seem to be in the same room at the same time. The bathhouse is, in many ways, a theater, but one without a stage or script. Its actors are everyday people, and their performances are subtle, layered, invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those who know where to look. In a place where the barriers between the body and the world are lowered, the truth, raw, complex, vulnerable, finds a way to rise like steam from the stone. There is a man named Rallan, a former courier with legs that once outran bandits on back roads, but now tremble when he climbs stairs. Once he was the fastest in the region, delivering messages between castles, monasteries, and war camps without rest. Now he moves with a cane and spends hours sitting at the edge of the cold pool, staring at his reflection without speaking. Some believe he's waiting for someone who never returned. Others say he simply doesn't know who he is without the speed that wants to find him. But one thing is certain. Every week, like clockwork, he comes. And every week, without fail, the youngest apprentice leaves a folded cloth beside his seat. They never exchange words, but the cloth is always there, clean, warm, perfectly folded. It is a quiet acknowledgement of a man who once ran faster than the wind and now carries silence like armor. In the far alcove of the dry chamber, you'll often find a man and woman seated at opposite corners of the same bench, never speaking, never meeting each other's eyes, but never quite leaving the room while the other remains. Their names aren't important. What matters is the space between them, thick with unsaid things, with memories too sharp for comfort. Years ago, they were lovers. That much is known. Something happened. Something only they remember. and now they orbit one another like moons around a sun that no longer burns. And yet, every week, they arrive, never together, never acknowledged, but always present, always within reach. Maybe it's habit. Maybe it's longing. Maybe it's punishment. The bathhouse doesn't ask, and neither do its patrons. Some stories are carried in silence, and the steam is thick enough to keep them from drifting too far. One day, a young man with a voice too soft and a smile too eager walked into the bathhouse with a notebook clutched to his chest. He was new to the town, fresh from somewhere far to the east, and came not for cleansing, but for listening. He called himself a chronicler, said he wanted to collect the wisdom of ordinary people. At first, the patrons humored him. He was polite, curious, full of questions. But as days passed, the smiles faded. Stories shared in confidence began to reappear, retold by strangers who should not have known them. Secrets unspoken for years resurfaced in tavern whispers. When the chronicler returned, he found the doors locked to him. No explanation given. The staff said the bathhouse was full every day forever because in this space trust is the highest currency, and betrayal stains deeper than any dirt. There was once an older woman, veiled always in lace, who came every third night and bathed only in rainwater. She brought it herself, in clay jars marked with runes no one could read. She never removed her veil even when submerged. People speculated about curses, about grief, about a vow taken too deeply into the bone. One night during the first storm of summer, she failed to arrive. The next morning they found her jars outside the door, full and cool, with a single red thread tied around the neck of each. She was never seen again. Some say she died, others say she moved on, but no one touched the jars. They remained there for a week, undisturbed. When they were finally moved by Isolde herself, they were emptied into the birth pool, and the thread burned in the hearth. No one asked why. Everyone felt it was the right thing to do. In the east chamber, the one with the high windows and the scent of beeswax, a quiet tragedy played out over many months. A child, no older than 8, began arriving with his father, a stonemason with strong arms and a weary voice. The boy did not speak. His face was slack, his eyes wide but empty. Some said illness, others injury. The father would carry him to the warmest pool and hold him there, singing softly, brushing water across his son's arms as if sculpting him anew. For months they came. For months the boy remained silent. Then one day, as the story goes, the boy blinked, just once, and raised a hand to the water. It was a small gesture, barely more than a twitch. But in that moment, the entire room paused. The bathhouse, silent and watching, held its breath. The father wept. No words were needed. They still come. The boy still does not speak, but he listens now, watches, moves. And each time he does, the father smiles like a man witnessing a miracle born from warmth and hope. Conflicts happen, of course. Quiet, sharp-edged ones that cut without a scene. A woman once accused another of theft, not of coin, but of affection. A man challenged another to a duel over a disagreement that began, bizarrely, with a disagreement about soap. These things happen in places of vulnerability, but the bathhouse handles them as it handles everything, gently, firmly, with the weight of tradition behind its actions. Apologies are offered, or not. People return, or don't. The water accepts all, but memory, like steam, lingers. Some stories are comedic, delightful in their mess. One afternoon, a pair of young apprentices found themselves locked in the linen closet after a prank turned sideways. They were trapped for hours, listening to gossip through the walls and whispering imagined responses. When they were finally found, covered in dust and laughter, their punishment was simple. They had to spend a week delivering towels to every guest by name. In doing so, they learned not just names, but faces, voices, histories. What began as a joke became their education. Today, one of them is second only to Isolde. The other left the town, became a steward in a far city, but writes back every spring, including a new towel in every parcel. All these stories, layered upon one another, become the bathhouse's true architecture. Not just walls and pools, but the echoes of human experience. The regrets, the reconciliations, the slow healing of things broken in places deeper than the skin. The bathhouse is not just a place of heat and water. It is a place of confrontation, not violent, but internal. It reflects what is brought into it. Pride melts here. So does bitterness. Lies whispered too often begin to sound strange in the open warmth. Truth, even painful truth, feels lighter when spoken into steam. And when the doors close, and the night stretches long and quiet, the bathhouse remembers. It doesn't judge, doesn't punish. It simply holds. It is the great witness to humanity's quiet, unseen battles, and the stage upon which redemption, however small, is always possible. Even the greatest pain loses its sharpness when soaked in enough understanding. And here, among the echoes and the water, understanding is never in short supply. There comes a moment, always in the bathhouse, usually near the end of the night or just before the first candle is lit in the early morning, when everything slows to a stillness so complete it almost doesn't feel real. The water no longer ripples. The air feels thick, not from heat, but from memory. You sit there, or maybe you just imagine it and realize that what surrounds you isn't just moisture clinging to your skin or warmth settling into your bones. What you feel is time. Centuries of it, layered, alive, breathing in unison with every person who has ever walked these halls. And that's when it hits you. This place is not just stone and steam. It is story, a cathedral of the ordinary sacred. Because even though the town beyond its walls will change, will expand or shrink or fall to war or famine, the bathhouse endures. Not out of defiance or magic, but because it answers a need so deeply human, it transcends circumstance. The need to pause, to be held, to be seen without judgment. The need to soak away everything heavy and return, even if only for an hour, to something weightless. In a world that never truly slows, the bathhouse offers what is rarest of all: stillness without loneliness. It is passed down not by deed or document, but by ritual. A mother brings her daughter and shows her how to fold the towel, how to dip her feet before easing in. An uncle explains the correct mixture of nettle and mint to soothe winter cough. A grandfather teaches a child how to tell when the water is ready, not by temperature, but by how it smells, how it swirls, how it speaks. These lessons are never written down. They're absorbed like moisture into cloth. And so the knowledge survives. The walls have been patched, the basins resealed. Some of the mosaics have been lost to time, but the spirit remains unchanged. Just as the fire that heats the pools is stoked each morning, the stories are rekindled with every guest who arrives. Some bring burdens, some bring laughter, some bring silence that speaks volumes, and all are welcomed. The bathhouse does not choose who it serves. Its grace is available to all who step inside. Even today, when historians study these structures, those still standing and those long reclaimed by root and ruin, they focus on function. They measure pipes and analyze mineral deposits. They theorize about construction methods and heating systems. But what they often miss is what the people already knew: that the real magic was never the warmth or the architecture. It was in what the place allowed people to express, to release, to connect, to remember themselves in the presence of others. A bathhouse wasn't just a place to be clean, it was where you went to remember how to be. And though this specific bathhouse we've been walking through together may be an echo, fictionalized and stitched from centuries of collective memory, it carries truth in every tile and flickering candle we've imagined. Because in some form or another, bathhouses like this existed. In every corner of the medieval world, they rose beside rivers, over springs, inside walled cities and deep within forests. Each was shaped by its people, by its region, by the songs sung and the tragedies mourned within its walls. And even where the stones have crumbled, the legacy remains, in traditions passed down, in the quiet hush that still falls over us when water is warm and silence is shared. Some who came to the bathhouse came to forget, And they succeeded for a time. Others came to remember and found clarity in the echo of dripping water. A few came only once but carried the feeling with them for life. And others returned over and over, tracing the same stones with bare feet until the stones knew them in return. All were changed, not because the bathhouse demanded it, but because it made change safe, possible, gentle. Maybe that's what we lose most in the world today. Not just the architecture or the rituals, but the permission to be human in community. We still bathe, we still gather, but seldom in a way that asks us to slow down, to share space without transaction or agenda. A bathhouse was never meant to be efficient. It was meant to be enough. Enough warmth to melt your pride. Enough quiet to hear yourself. Enough presence to know you're not alone. And now, as we step out from that imagined stone archway one final time, the air feels cooler, sharper. Reality returns, but not in the harsh way it sometimes does. It returns softly, as if waiting outside with shoes placed neatly by the door. You're not the same as when you entered. Not exactly. Something inside you has shifted. Maybe something long ignored has stirred. Or maybe something tender has finally been given space to rest. Before we part, I want to offer this. If this journey through steam and time meant something to you, if it stirred a memory, or brought you peace, or simply made you breathe a little slower, I'd love to know. This space we've built here between us across time zones and screens isn't unlike that old bathhouse. It runs on stories, on presence, on shared moments of quiet discovery. So please take a moment. Leave a comment below and tell me what you felt. Did it remind you of a place from your childhood? A tradition you still carry? A ritual you didn't know you missed? And if you'd like to support this channel, I invite you, gently, sincerely, to subscribe. Not because algorithms demand it, but because I want you to be part of this growing circle of people who value depth, reflection, and the warmth of a well-told story. Tap the button if it feels right. Stay if it feels like home. And if you've been here before, welcome back. You're part of the legacy now. Like the regulars who return to the bathhouse week after week, your presence adds to the richness of everything we create together. So light a candle, pour a cup of something warm, carry the feeling with you into whatever comes next. And remember, there's always a place for you here, where stories linger like steam, and silence is just another way of being heard. Until next time, be well, be kind, and let yourself soak in the moment.